And now for the tale of Dick Squires. I remember, ladies and lasses, the mess of a young gent named Richard Squires, Dick for short. He'd rode into town and parked on the wrong side of the road. He hadn't seen the royal proclamation regarding parking, so the local orangeman reminded him to move his transport to the right hitching post. By gee, he knew horses. He rode a gelding of small stature, and although Dick was a commoner, he rode through life with the stature of a noble. Now, as the story goes, Dick took it upon himself to keep his water supplies fresh by adding some grain to his flask, and he kept a spear in his saddlebags. The orange man parched, asked young Richard for a swig of water rather than pressing for the parking tax. Like a gent, Richard agreed, and then all hell broke loose. The orange man drew his short sword after spewing the contents of the bottle back toward the pavement. A struggle ensued, and Dick mounted his steed and was on the lam. It seems that the grain had fermented in the bottle, breaching the laws of a land that brewing meads or whiskies was highly outlawed by the local sheriff. Needless to say, there were hefty fines when breaching such laws, and in those days if you couldn't pay there was a long sentence in the lock-up. And oh aye, there were horrible dungeons and places that bread and water were the norm, and amongst other cruelties. So Dick took it on the lam, and the greatest chase in history began. Now it must be said that the first offences rumoured to have occurred in the north, perhaps near Londonderry, but young Richard was a horseman well travelled through the land. He knew the hills and trails, and some say even paths through the bogs. Dick galloped away to his homestead where not long ago he and his wife were celebrating the birth of their new daughter. His wife was a real beauty, some say of African descent, and by and large the sort of gentleman Dick was, referred to his lady as the Rose of Tralee. Well, at least for obvious reasons to his new and beautiful band, he dubbed the lass Black Beauty. Now you might be saying to yourself, where is this going? Well, I'll let you know now. Young Dick had to put on his spurs and left home. He knew he'd been gone for a while, so he renamed his horse Little Black, and the gelding was indeed of a grand stock of Ireland. Not black, mind you, but a good shade of chestnut, at only 14 hands. But Rose, oh Rose, was to play her part in running a subterfuge between the Orangemen and the underground mail. It was said that signs were left all the way down the line of dwellings that was safe for Dick to visit all the way to Cork. At every inn, if it shouldn't be safe because of constabulary and innkeepers and such, would leave out their signs, and then feign to the soldiers that no skullduggerous villains were being about because of their presence, and that they kept the people in line. In this way Dick knew which inns to avoid, and quite often there would be lookers out for this well-known commoner, who acted like a gent. Some say he almost got nicked while out in the meadows chewing on a bit of straw, but before the constabulary or Orangemen laid any such eyes on him, there was a solitary father, named Father Bernard, who had lost his entire family in the famine, and he was a strange story to himself, as he took his water keg and filled it with what he could find, and survived by drinking only the nutrient of a keg. Well, the story goes that Father Bernard happened across Dick Squires on his travels. The father, a good man, showed the grace to lecture Richard on the evils of alcohol. He took Dick's confession and changed his liquor for water from his keg. But before Father Bernard left Dick to go his way, one of the sheriff's men happened on the pair. Dick told the truth that only water was in his bottle, but about his bottle and Father Bernard's keg. Both being inspected, they both became wanted men, and when Dick's water bottle and Father Bernard's keg were identified as having whiskey, a struggle ensued that saw the sheriff's man shot dead, and a warrant was put out for Dick Squires, wanted dead or alive, when news arrived of a shooting at the court. There was no mention of Father Bernard, and he went on wandering the land on foot as poorly fathers do, spreading the word about the evils of liquor, and as he had become a little absent-minded, replenished the hungry from his vitamin keg, at least what he could spare. They say he nourished all of Ireland. The crowds sat glued to their chairs, eager for more. Everywhere young Richard stopped on his way down the line, and east to west throughout Ireland he left word for his Black Beauty. The establishment had the hardest time in tracking Dick because they couldn't place a trace on the name of his vehicle or colour, as the only witness left alive who had cornered him was dead. When questioning the public about his thoroughbred, the most common response was, "Oh, Black Beauty for sure, and for sure she's a beaut." Tracking Little Black became difficult due to Dick's mastery at horsemanship, and the fact that Little Black was a gelding, not a mare. Now the chase went on for quite a long time, and Dick certainly led them a merry dance. Before he knew it, all manner of charges were being ramped up right back to the first parking tax to murder and evasion, even though you've all worked out he was protecting Father Bernard, who'd taken his confession. Quite a time passed, and Dick rode all over Ireland, and with the help of the public he remained uncaught. Finally, after being betrayed, might I add, by a known drunk, Dick was cornered right on the bluffs as far south as you can get a ways over from Cork. But the story doesn't end there. When faced with certain death, Dick circled his horse to the bluffs and took a running jump, rather at the bottom of the rocks than the rope and amongst a flurry of powder balls. Little Black took leap, and the result was so much in respect of her horsemanship that Little Black and Dick had together. But they landed safely in New Zealand, and they say Little Black was to drop a shoe on the way over, and the tears of the Irish filled the print. Quite a story from the fairies about how the Pacific Ocean formed. But a little more, if you please. It's said that Dick so much pined for his Rose and Black Beauty that he hung up his stirrups after searching for a way back home. It's believed that he was so faithful to his vows that on not being able to return home, Dick passed away on the west coast of New Zealand. A tree grew on the spot where he passed away, a tree you all know in New Zealand as the Wild Irishman. Little Black outlived Dick, I hear, and was supposed to have mixed his seed with the mare, and the talk passed down by the fairies to my father was that the brood mare who linked up with Little Black sired what is known today in New Zealand as a horse stock known as a Kaimanawa stock.